Yeah, let's do it. All right, again, I'm Zach, and I'll be talking about what's new in Swift 5, 5.1 through 5.5, and a little one addition to 5.6. So I'm just going to go over my highlights. I hope it's not too quick. There's not too much that I have highlights from, but there's a lot of changes in Swift, so we can go through and do some examples or demos or anything like that if anyone has any questions. So what's new in Swift 5? One of the first new things that I kind of remember in Swift 5.0 was that they added a result type in the standard library. And a result type is simply an enum with a success and a failure. So it makes it easier to write completion blocks or API or any kind of code that might fail or throw an error. And you can look in this as description, but seeing an example, that's simply the result type right there, just an enum with two generics, a success and a failure. And like I said, it was mainly used for completion blocks. Yes, sorry, if I'm going fast, I'm sorry.
Can I ask questions?
Yes, no, please interrupt me.
What about Boolean? What's so great about a result that you can't use Boolean?
That's a good question. I guess the main thing with the result type is that, yes, a Boolean has true and false, and the result type has failure and or success and failure, but the result type comes with a generic. So we'd have to bundle a Boolean and then the generic values. So we can pass in any type of value for the success. If the success in my result is a string, then I pass a success with a string in it. If it's a failure, I actually know the error that it's saying. It might just be the error type, and I get some other error like JSON decoding error or anything like that. So that's where you can see right here. I can fetch from URL session and get some data back. And then all I do is I just handle the response or handle the error and pass it through to that result. And that would have that completion block fire for a success or an error going through the same code or the same exit point on the code. You just return the result. I can show a really quick example of, let's just say, fetch and result. And so we can have a result here, and I can say string if it's successful, and then I can just say an error if it's not. And then in here, I can just say result dot or result. Do I know how it works? Oh my gosh. Oh, sorry. You have to switch on it because it's an enum. So then you do the case and you say, oh my gosh, sorry. This is on the spot and I don't know how to type Swift. So then I'll have the success and failure block. So if it's successful, I get some string and I can print out this string. And then if it's a failure, then I get this error and I can use this error and print out the error. So makes it pretty easy. If I can finish this off, just show you the kind of full thing of it. I don't know what all these things are. So when I do a fetch, I can just say dot success and I pass in a string. Or I can say that it's a failure and I give it the error that it fails on. So it makes it very easy. It's the same exit point of that I just return a result, but it's either a success or failure. So that was a nice addition to Swift 5.0. We'll touch back on the result type because it's kind of out of date now with async await coming in, but we'll get to that later. And another one in Swift 5.1, synthesizing default values for member-wise initializer. Sorry, the title's kind of long. Simply put, a struct in Swift automatically gets synthesized for its initializer. So if you have a struct dog and it has an age and a name, well, you don't need to make an initializer in Swift by default because internally it's synthesized and you just get the initializer just out of the box. So what that means is if I write this struct dog and age, that I will get a generated initializer in it that has age and string or a name being passed in. The nice part about this one is that you can see age is defaulted to 0, and that carries through for the default initializer. So that at the very end, I can just pass in the dog's name and the dog's age is 0. So that makes it a lot easier. Sadly, this doesn't transfer over outside of the Swift module, so you still need to expose an initializer publicly. This is all internal, so it doesn't really help if you're expecting to use this data outside of this module. So if you wanted to, everything would need to be public, and you need a public init right here, and you couldn't use the generated member-wise initializer that it says right here. But that's a nice one because really, like, I don't want to create init for struct that has like 5 different values and changing all of that. It just makes it super quick to work with. Next one, and Swift 5.1 was a lot of little nicety, little tweaks and little changes there. So the next one that I have here is that implicit returns from a single line expression don't need a return. So really small change. If it only takes one line to do a function, you don't have to write return anymore. That's pretty easy. Swift's had that before for map and other closure functions that, that can be passed around, like parameters or variables. But this makes it so that any function, even, well, I guess, yeah, any function can just return one line without the return keyword. Going into Swift 5.3, jumping ahead, Swift 5.2 really wasn't that big of an update at all. It really only had 2 things that caught my eye. And we won't go over that. We can go back over and see, but there's just 2 things. So I didn't add anything to here for that. But in Swift 5.3, I'd say Swift 5.3 and Swift 5.5 are the biggest changes. So you'll see kind of a lot of syntax changes around them, and one being a multi-trailing closure. Giving some context to closures in Swift, Swifts come with trailing closures for a long time. Pretty much the last closure you have in a function, maybe I should just type this. So let's say we have a trailing, and then we have some closure and a closure. A closure is just a function declaration of something to something. So we take nothing in and we return nothing. So that's a void to void closure. And so for trailing, to use this, you can see I get 2 different options here. Normally you just pass in stuff with the parameters and the parameter name, and I can just say, hey, I just want to print hello, and that passes. That's, you know, successful. But what the trailing closure allows me to do is it allows me to drop all of these parameters or parentheses, and then even the parameter name, and just have it like this. So this is what a trailing closure is in Swift, and it only works for the end, the very end. Like if I put it right here, or if I put some value right here, the trailing closure wouldn't work anymore. I'd start getting an error, even if I defaulted it. But now in, oh my gosh. Now in Swift 5.3, you can see that now we can actually have multiple trailing closures. The syntax isn't too nice, I would say, but you can see right here. I'll pull it over. We have 2 trailing closures. And let me just import UIKit so I don't get to these errors. And you can see that animate comes with a duration. And then there's this animate block. And that animate block is right here. And then there's a completion block. So it actually has 2 closures. And this is the multi-trailing closure. You can see the completion's right here. So if I did show you this function and we looked at animate, that's a big one. This one's the one that we're using. We have animate with duration, and then we have animations, and then we have the completion block. So if I type in exactly what we have up here, we get this new kind of syntax where all the closures are trailing. I don't know if I really like this because I kind of styled mine different, but that's definitely something kind of weird that's come in that I've started to see more of. Another example, you can see that if we have an IP address publisher, we can just sync and use combine, and we can sync and then also receive the completion right here. So just a nice little addition. I thought it was pretty fun. This is another synthesized addition to Swift, and this is probably one of my more favorite ones, is that when you have enums and enums with a lot of cases, sometimes you want to compare those. But personally, I don't want to write conformance to comparable for every enum that I want to compare. An example right here is, let's say we have a membership with a premium that takes an int. So premium could be premium 0, premium 100, premium 1,000,000. Well, obviously premium 1,000,000 is more than premium 0, but if, or before this, I would have to write the conformance to comparable. But now with this one, all you have to do is add comparable and everything just works out of the box. So really nice little addition there to reduce the amount of code that you have to write. So then when you sort this, preferred, premium, general, and premium 0, it would show you that premium 0 is first, and then premium 1, and then preferred and membership. And that's because this would have the lowest value of the enum, and then this would have 1, and then 2, technically speaking. The highest value is the lowest in when you're counting it, even if it's not integer or that stuff, or what am I trying to say? Now, probably one of the biggest changes and I'd like to preface this before I go into this, Apple came out with Swift UI, and it was a huge change away from UI Kit, but Swift came with a lot of changes in it, and I think Swift UI was introduced in 5.1, and Apple brought in all these changes to Swift without actually going through the official evolution. So function builders were known as result builders when, sorry.
I have a question.
Yes, no, please.
I have one. Why is preferred higher than the premium one?
That's great. Great question. Here, let's just copy this and move it over. So this would technically have a value of 0 behind the scenes, and I'll just write that down. Yeah. Yeah, I was just going to print this out and kind of show you. So if you want to talk, feel free. So if we print this out and run it, we'll kind of see what's going on. Oh, wow, that locks it. So yeah, sorted by, let's say, greater than, and that'll change it up. I think it sorts it by less than first. So it's sort smallest to greatest. Gonna work? It says it's running. But yeah.
The integer that you're passing into premium, how does that, is it only for sorting premium?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So premium is going to always be lower than preferred. And it doesn't matter if premium 1,000,000, because it is lower, or at least that's my understanding. I might be wrong, but that's what I believe. But if you did have like a special case and that had an int, then this would be 2 and that would be 3. And then general would be the highest value that you have. So just kind of still not running. That's not good. We'll just ignore that. Sorry, no, back to result builders and Swift UI. After Swift UI came out and after Apple started officially adding these changes to the language or the Swift evolution, they came out with function builders, and function builders are probably one of the more complex things that I'll talk about. But in the most simple sense, it allows for some developer to write a DSL style, or pretty much pass in a list of items without using an array or commas or anything like that. So you can see that we have this func build, and it returns an int or 3 ints. It's a tuple builder. And so this is a type of function builder that someone demoed or put on the evolution doc. And pretty much instead of doing a parenthesis and then passing everything in this tuple and then doing all that, I can just pass 3 values in a row, and that would do the exact same thing. Let's see another example. That one's a little tough. Oh, that's a lot of code. Let's not do that. I added a few in here if I need to panic. So just ignore that. So with Swift UI, sorry. I'll just show you really quick with the VStack in Swift UI. This opens up to a curly brace, and then we have this thing called content right here, and it's just well, the underscore is a generic, so ignore that. But this takes just a closure that returns something, and you can return as much text as you want because it's a vertical stack. So I'm stacking hello, and then hello is on top of bye. So this is a function builder, and it builds SwiftUI views, and pretty much it just puts them all in an array. I mean, ideally, it's very similar to just saying I have an array, and those are my elements. It just makes the syntax cleaner. Also, you can do conditionals in it. So if, let's say I wanted to conditionally show by. So if I said, if hello, then I'll show hello. Otherwise, I'll show goodbye. To do this with an array, I mean, then you'd need to potentially create two separate arrays. You need to create one for this and one for that, or remove an element or anything like that. But the function builders allow you to do conditionals in it, and you don't have to worry about a return statement or anything like that. So we're not returning in any of these. This is just kind of how function builders work. They just pass in the values. So pretty big change in Swift, and you can create your own function builders. This example right here was the example of creating an HTML builder, and you could pass in however many HTML components in it. And then obviously that's kind of recursive. So you'll just be building HTML and HTML, and then it would just build it for you and return this component idea. But here you can see that this is actually kind of the code right here. When you're creating a body or a division or a paragraph, you're going to take in that array of HTML to build inside of it. So sorry, that was a big one. That had a lot of changes after SwiftUI. And now probably the biggest one, and I really don't want to rush into this, async await, or Swift 5.5 was probably the biggest change to Swift so far. And it was just chock full of concurrency, async await, actors, and a ton of other things for concurrency. Sorry, I already said it. But async await allows us to write super simple code, and then just let the compiler or let the program know that this code is going to async, or this code will await an async. So if we have, or if we want to load some web sources and we don't want to do a dispatch queue, and we don't want to, do combine, or you don't want to do RX, then all we have to do is say that when we load this web resource at this path, that it asynchronously throws a resource. And same for the other things like that. They can throw, maybe we have a server error, maybe we don't have any, internet connection. So all of these will throw, and then when we're going to process the image data, we can just await all of these, and the compiler will handle all of the threading and all of the management for that. But then, yeah, you don't have to worry if decode image is done before load web resource. That will be handled all for you. That's all I have right there, but I can talk in a little bit more if anyone had any questions.
Did you scroll a little bit? Did they show an example of the pyramid of doom up there?
Oh no, I didn't get that. That's a good one. I didn't grab that though. But we can go through again really quick if anyone wanted to ask any more. If we have any questions, I can be done. My mouth is dry. I don't care.
So before async await, did they just think of this from like a web dev perspective? I know they use like promise chains or things like that. What was the way of doing asynchronous programming with Swift for that?
That's a great question, and it kind of lines up with what you're saying and what I actually want to talk about before. Completion blocks were like the first phase of, I don't want to say asynchronous code, of doing something after something's done. So that's why when I was talking about the result type and saying that's kind of moved on, is because result type was used for completion blocks to either do something on success or something on failure. Like let's say there's some UI I wanted to update, and I pass in a completion block with a result type, and success, it updates the UI, and failure, it retries. It's something simple like that. It's first started with completion blocks. We got result type, and now it's moved to async await. So pretty much it's kind of out of date. And yeah, it's more compiler magic behind the scenes versus everyone worrying about, like you said, the pyramid of doom, where you have completion block inside of completion block inside of completion block, and you just keep going. But other than that, it was RX Swift or reactive Swift, and then combine. And then, yeah, now we have async await, which is vastly different than anything we've had before. So Any other questions? Sweet. Thank you, thank you. So what's new in Swift? I have a little command line tool of what's new in Swift, and I just stole stuff from the website, what's new in Swift. And then updated everything in here. So yeah, you can download this and you can run this and see, what's new in Swift 5.2. It's like, oh, okay, just these two things. That's it. So yeah, I made this as a little fun little thing to go along with it. Tool. Thanks.